This is a picture of Syria prior to 2011, an up-and-coming prospect nation at the forefront of Arabic progress and culture. And this is a picture of Syria after 2011, a deeply hurting nation that holds the unenviable title of being the world's most dystopian country. But what exactly brought it to this point?
Pro-democracy demonstrations,
all calling for the regime
against the
to fall.
government of Bashar al-Assad.
Mass protests, shootings and killings.
Syria spiraled into a brutal civil war.
The governments of Russia and China,
abducted by ISIL fighters and bought and sold multiple times.
Decade of war.
Oppression and poverty, power outages and water cuts.
Extraordinary struggle to survive.
These are Syria's final Utopia Index results. Not ranked bottom in any of the individual categories, but consistently performing poorly enough in all to render it with the worst overall score. The root of the problem stemming mainly from a post-2011 order that would forever shift the fortunes of the Syrian people. In March 2011, a series of Syrian people took to the streets in opposition to the Syrian president and dictator Bashar al-Assad. Said protests, undoubtedly inspired by the events of the Arab Spring, that had seen a series of Arab nations toppling their own dictatorial presidents from the seat of power. But whilst the people rising up in opposition to their oppressive rulers is undoubtedly a romantic idea, reality has little regard for poetic justice, as the romantic Syrian rebellion for freedom would quickly disintegrate into a tragic disaster. See, unlike fallen regimes, like those of Egypt that held very close relations to Western superpowers, or even Libya that had pursued a more neutral international relations strategy, Syria instead completely shunned notions of neutrality and Western alliance in favor of establishing close relations with non-Western superpowers like China and mainly Russia, a strategy that proved very rewarding in the wake of the Arab Spring. When in the face of anti-authoritarian uprisings, the democratic West effectively abandoned allies such as Egypt and actively inhibited friendless states such as Libya, thus leading to the eventual fall of both regimes. The Syrian case study, however, differs, as due to support from other superpowers, Assad was emboldened to violently resist calls for his removal, in the process triggering nationwide protests to turn increasingly violent, and eventually into a full-scale civil war that would forever deteriorate any semblance of Syrian stability. As smelling trouble looming, Assad concentrated almost all of his forces within a protective Damascus stronghold, leaving the rest of the country to collapse into a state of lawlessness, as a previously united opposition began splintering into a series of individual insurgencies. This situation infamously leading to the rise of the Islamic State in Syria, a violent and radical jihadist military force that during its heyday captured large swaths of Assad-abandoned territory, governing them based upon the strictest interpretations of Islam possible, and committing a large amount of atrocities in the meantime. Today, luckily, the Islamic State has effectively lost all the gains that it had achieved during the early part of the civil war. The same, however, cannot be said about Assad, who ever since the civil war has only become more authoritarian, snatching absolute dictatorial power as the rest of the country continues to burn in the ashes of war and instability that are not much better now than during the ISIS period. The economic situation equally as desperate, as the global West, standing in opposition to Assad, has imposed heavy sanctions on the country. Sanctions that have unfortunately been felt mostly not by Assad, but instead by the general Syrian populace, who are forced to struggle with widespread shortages in food, medicines, and more. The suffering almost inescapable, as colossal corruption issues, the rates of which are only bested by one other country, render humanitarian aid almost impossible to conduct, as corrupt government officials either hoard resources for themselves or distribute aid back on the black market for the sake of a quick profit. And while Syria does manage to reach the top 80 with its state power score, this of course serves as little consolation to the people, whose issues with said state are plain and obvious. This has been Sean from Into the Ether. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and ciao!